Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Pioneer, watching stars blur past the viewing window. This was humanity's first real trip beyond their home solar system. The year was 2387, and Earth had finally built ships that could travel faster than light. Jake felt proud to command this historic mission. "Navigation check, Ryan," Jake called to his chief engineer. Chief Engineer Ryan Davis looked up from his console with worry in his eyes. "Sir, something's wrong with our jump coordinates. The computer is showing errors." Before Jake could respond, the ship shook violently. The stars outside stopped moving. But these were not the stars they expected to see near Kepler 442. These stars looked completely different. "Where are we?" asked Dr. Lisa Carter, the ship's science officer. She was studying the star patterns on her screen. Ryan checked his instruments again. "I don't know, sir. This doesn't match any star charts we have. We're nowhere near where we should be." Suddenly, Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone shouted from his position, "Captain, ships approaching fast. Very big ships." Jake looked at the main screen. Massive vessels were coming toward them. These ships were unlike anything humans had ever built. They were sleek and beautiful, but also clearly built for war. The smallest ship was 10 times bigger than the Pioneer. "Red alert," Jake ordered. "All hands to battle stations." The alien ship surrounded the Pioneer quickly. There was no escape. A voice came through the communication system speaking perfect English somehow. "Unknown vessel, you will surrender immediately. Prepare to be boarded." Jake looked at his crew. They were scared, but ready to follow his orders. "Open a channel," he said. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Pioneer. We mean no harm. We are explorers who got lost." The alien voice replied coldly. "You will submit to the Dominion. Resistance is futile. All species bow to our power." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. No one told humans to bow. "We don't bow to anyone. If you want to talk, we can talk, but we won't surrender." There was silence for a long moment. Then the alien spoke again, sounding confused. "This is unusual. Prepare to receive our representatives." A strange beam of light filled the Pioneer's cargo bay. When the light faded, several alien beings stood there. They were tall and elegant, with skin that looked like crystal. Each alien had 4 arms and moved with graceful steps. Their leader wore robes that seemed to change color. Admiral Kethvar stepped forward. He had ruled fleets for centuries and conquered hundreds of worlds. Never had he met a species that refused to kneel immediately upon seeing Dominion power. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Dominion. We have ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years. All species serve us. You will tell us the location of your home world so we can bring your people into our empire." Jake crossed his arms. "I'm Captain Morrison. We're from Earth, and we don't serve anyone but ourselves." The Admiral stared at Jake with his large, glowing eyes. In all his years of conquest, no primitive species had ever spoken to him this way. Usually they fell to their knees and begged for mercy. "You do not understand," the Admiral said slowly. "We have weapons that can destroy your entire world. We have armies that number in the billions. Your small ship carries perhaps 50 beings. You cannot resist the Dominion." Dr. Carter stepped forward. She was fascinated by these aliens even though they were threatening her people. "Admiral, we understand you're powerful. But humans have a saying, 'Give me liberty or give me death.' We would rather die free than live as slaves." The Admiral's crystalline skin changed color, showing his confusion. His advisors whispered among themselves in their musical language. This had never happened before in the long history of Dominion expansion. Lieutenant Commander Stone moved, closer to Jake, ready to fight if needed. He was smaller than these aliens, but he had no fear in his eyes. Ryan Davis stayed at his engineering station, secretly scanning the aliens' equipment and technology. "Your species is clearly primitive," the Admiral said. "Your ship is crude. Your weapons are simple. Yet you refuse to accept reality. This is most puzzling." "Maybe that's because we see reality differently than you do," Jake replied. "We see a galaxy that should be free. You see a galaxy that should serve you. We can't agree on that." The Admiral walked around the bridge, studying the humans. He had conquered species with technology far more advanced than Earth's. He had defeated warriors much stronger than these humans, but none of them had this strange quality of defiance. "Admiral," one of his advisors whispered, "the High Council should hear of this. This species may require special protocols." Admiral Kethavar nodded, slowly. In 50,000 years of Dominion rule, only 3 species had ever refused initial surrender. All 3 had been completely destroyed as examples to others. But something about these humans was different. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said, finally, "I will contact the High Council about your species. Until they decide your fate, you will remain here as our prisoners." "We're not prisoners," Jake said firmly. "We're representatives of Earth, and we're telling you now that Earth will never bow to your empire." Dr. Carter watched the aliens carefully. Their body language showed they were deeply troubled by this conversation. She realized that the Dominion had ruled for so long that they couldn't understand resistance anymore. "Admiral," she said, "may I ask you something? In all your conquest, how many species have chosen death over slavery?" The Admiral's skin color shifted again. "None. All species choose life, even as slaves. It is logical." "Then you've never met humans before," Dr. Carter replied. As the Admiral and his group prepared to leave, he turned back to Jake. "Your species will be tested, Captain Morrison. The Dominion has ways of breaking the spirit of defiant races. None have ever passed these tests." "Then you're about to meet your first failure," Jake said. After the aliens left, the crew gathered on the bridge. They knew they were in terrible danger. The Dominion was more powerful than anything Earth had ever imagined, but none of them suggested surrender. "Sir," Ryan said quietly, "I managed to get some scans of their technology. It's incredible, but I think I understand some of it. Maybe we can find weaknesses." "Good work, Ryan," Jake replied. "Lisa, what did you learn about them?" "They're completely confused by us, Captain. Their entire society seems built on the idea that everyone will eventually surrender to them. They literally don't know how to handle refusal." Alex Stone looked out at the alien ships surrounding them. "So what do we do now, sir?" Jake looked at his crew, these brave humans who were now the first line of defense for their entire species. "We do what humans have always done when faced with bullies. We stand up to them." The Pioneer hung in space, a tiny ship surrounded by an empire's might. But inside that small vessel burned something the galaxy hadn't seen in 50,000 years. The unbreakable spirit of a free people who would never kneel. The Dominion High Council met in their great crystal hall on Zarian Prime. Supreme Overlord Vexthul sat on his throne, his ancient eyes glowing with concern. In 50,000 years of rule, no species had ever refused to surrender after meeting Dominion forces. "Show me these humans again," Vexthul commanded. Admiral Kethavar activated a holographic display showing the Pioneer's crew. "They are primitive, Supreme Overlord. Weak bodies, simple technology. Yet they refuse to submit." The other council members whispered among themselves. Councilor Zephyra, the oldest among them, spoke first. "This is dangerous, Supreme Overlord. If word spreads that a species can refuse the Dominion, others may follow their example. Then we use the trials," Vexthul decided. "Bring them to Zarion Prime. Subject them to the trials of subjugation. These tests have broken every defiant spirit for millennia. The humans will kneel, or they will die." Days later, the Pioneers' crew found themselves transported to the Dominion capital world. Zarion Prime was a planet of crystal spires and floating cities. Billions of aliens from conquered worlds worked here, all serving their Dominion masters. Jake Morrison and his crew were brought before the High Council in chains. But even in chains, they stood tall and met the aliens' gaze without fear. "Humans of Earth," Supreme Overlord Vexthul spoke, his voice echoing through the great hall. "You will face 3 trials. First, the trial of mind, where you must solve impossible mathematics while experiencing pain. Second, the trial of body, where you must defeat our greatest warrior in combat. Third, the trial of spirit, where you will feel the despair of every species we have conquered, And if we pass these trials? Jake asked. No species has ever passed, Vexthal replied. You will break, as all others have broken. Then you will beg to serve the Dominion. Dr. Carter stepped forward. I'll take the trial of mind. I'll face your warrior, Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone said. Captain Jake Morrison looked at the Supreme Overlord. I'll take the trial of spirit. The first trial began in a chamber filled with pain-inducing devices. Dr. Carter was strapped to a chair while alien scientists attached neural disruptors to her head. The pain was designed to make thinking impossible. Solve these mathematical theorems, the Dominion scientist commanded. They are based on 17-dimensional space and quantum probability matrices. No primitive mind can solve them under torture. The pain hit Carter like fire through her brain. She screamed but forced herself to focus. The equations appeared, on screens around her. They were incredibly complex, designed by Dominion mathematicians to be unsolvable. But Carter had spent years studying chaos theory and quantum mechanics on Earth. While the pain tried to shatter her concentration, she looked at the problems from a human perspective. The Dominion approached mathematics with rigid hierarchical thinking. Humans were more flexible. The answer to the first equation is pi multiplied by the inverse quantum constant. She gasped through the pain. The Dominion scientists stared in shock. No one had ever solved that equation before. Carter continued, working through problem after problem. Her human brain, trained to think creatively under pressure, found solutions the structured Dominion minds couldn't see. When the trial ended, she had solved 12 of the 15 impossible theorems. The second trial took place in the Great Arena. Lieutenant Commander Stone faced Grixtal, the Dominion's champion warrior. Grixtal was 8 feet tall, with skin-like armor and 4 powerful arms. He had never lost a battle. Stone was much smaller and weaker. He had only 2 arms and human reflexes. The crowd of Dominion nobles expected to see him crushed in minutes. The battle began with Grixtal charging forward like a massive bull. Stone dodged to the side, using his smaller size to stay away from those powerful arms. He couldn't win through strength, so he had to use his brain. Stone studied his opponent's fighting style. Grixtal was incredibly strong but predictable. He had fought thousands of battles, but always against enemies who tried to match his strength. Stone did something different. Instead of fighting back, Stone kept dodging and moving. He made Grixtal chase him around the arena, wearing down the big warrior. When Grixtal swung his forearms, Stone ducked under them and struck at weak points, joints, pressure spots, nerve clusters. The crowd grew quiet. They had never seen fighting like this before. Stone was losing by traditional measures, taking more hits and being knocked down repeatedly. But each time he got back up and each time Grixtal moved a little slower. Finally, after an hour of combat, Grixtal collapsed from exhaustion. Stone had never actually defeated him in direct combat, but he had outlasted him. The champion warrior looked up at Stone with something new in his eyes. Respect. You fight with honor, small warrior, Grixtal said. I have never faced an opponent like you. The third trial was the most terrible. Captain Morrison was placed in a psychic chamber designed to project the mental anguish of billions of conquered beings. Every species that had ever fallen to the Dominion, every being who had lost hope, their despair was focused into Morrison's mind. The weight of 50,000 years of conquest crashed down on him. He felt the sadness of mothers whose children were taken as slaves. He experienced the hopelessness of warriors who watched their worlds burn. The accumulated grief of an entire galaxy tried to crush his spirit. But Morrison was human. His people had faced their own dark times. Wars, plagues, oppression, slavery. But they had never given up. When the alien despair tried to break him, Morrison thought of human history. He remembered the slaves who fought for freedom. He thought of soldiers who died defending their homes. He recalled scientists who never gave up searching for cures to diseases. Every human who had ever refused to surrender lent strength to his spirit. Something unexpected happened. The psychic feedback from Morrison's defiance began to damage the alien equipment. His thoughts of human courage and determination created mental energy the machines couldn't handle. Sparks flew from the psychic projectors. Alarm bells rang throughout the chamber. The Dominion technicians ran for their lives as their equipment exploded around them. When the smoke cleared, Morrison stood unbroken in the wreckage of the trial chamber. Supreme Overlord Vexthul stared in disbelief. The trials had never failed before. They were designed to break any spirit, crush any will to resist. Yet these humans had passed them all. "This is impossible," Counselor Zephyra whispered. "The trials are perfect. They cannot fail." But they had failed. Dr. Carter had solved the unsolvable. Stone had earned a warrior's respect through tactics no one had seen before. Morrison had broken the spirit-crushing machine with nothing but human determination. The High Council was silent. For the first time in 50,000 years, they faced a problem they couldn't solve with traditional methods. "What are these creatures?" Vexthul asked quietly. Admiral Kethvar, who had watched all 3 trials, spoke slowly. "I believe, Supreme Overlord, that they are something we have never encountered before. They are truly free beings." "That's impossible," another counselor said. "Freedom is chaos. Order requires submission. This is the natural law." "Then maybe," Morrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the great hall, "your natural law is wrong." The words hung in the air like a challenge. The most powerful empire in galactic history had just been told their entire philosophy was false, and they had no way to prove otherwise. The trials had failed. The humans remained unbroken. And across the galaxy, word was already spreading that someone had finally stood up to the Dominion and survived. News traveled fast across the galaxy. On Mining World 7739, a group of Catherian rebels huddled in their underground hideout. Their leader, Vraktos, listened to the smuggled transmission with growing excitement. "The humans passed the trials of subjugation," he whispered to his followers. "All 3 trials they did not break." The other Catherians looked at each other with wonder. For 200 years they had planned rebellion against the Dominion, but fear always stopped them. The Dominion seemed too powerful, too eternal. Now for the first time someone had proven the Empire could be defied. "If they can resist, so can we," Vraktos declared. "We are not slaves. We are Catherians, and we choose freedom." On the ocean world of Aquatica, the Oceanic Collective received the same news through their underwater communication networks. These aquatic beings had submitted to Dominion rule 3 centuries ago. Their leader Flozinger Deepcurrent called an emergency gathering. "The surface dwellers called humans have shown us something important," she sang to the assembled collective. "The Dominion is not unstoppable, they can be challenged." The Oceanic Collective had been secretly developing new defensive technologies in their deep ocean laboratories. Now they decided to accelerate their programs. If war came, they would be ready. Even on Spartus, the warrior world conquered 400 years ago, the news stirred something that had been sleeping. War Chief Stoneheart gathered the remaining clan leaders in the ancient fighting pits. "Our ancestors died fighting the Dominion," he growled. "We swore we would never fight again. But these humans, they show us what we forgot. A warrior's spirit cannot be conquered, only hidden." The clan leaders beat their chests in the old way, making the warriors pledge they had not spoken in centuries. "We choose the blade over the chain. We choose death before dishonor." Supreme Overlord Vexthul received reports from across the galaxy. Rebellion was stirring on dozens of worlds. Species that had been peaceful slaves for centuries were suddenly asking dangerous questions. "This is exactly what I feared," he told his council. "The human example is spreading like a virus. We must act quickly before the situation becomes uncontrollable." "Send the full battle fleet to Earth," Counselor Zephyra suggested. "Destroy their homeworld completely. Make an example of them that the galaxy will never forget." Vexthul agreed. "Admiral Zarketh will lead our greatest armada. We will not just defeat the humans, we will erase them from existence. Their planet will become a dead rock, a warning to any who think of defying the Dominion." Meanwhile, on Earth, President Helen Crawford stood in the United Nations Emergency Command Center. The transmission from the Pioneer had finally reached home, carried by an automated probe that Jake Morrison had secretly launched. "Ladies and gentlemen," she addressed the world leaders gathered around the table, "our people are prisoners of an alien empire, and that empire is coming for us." The world had never been more united. Every nation put aside their differences to face this threat. General Robert Hayes commanded the Global Defense Forces. Dr. Nathan Foster led the scientific teams trying to understand alien technology from the data Ryan Davis had sent back. "How long do we have?" President Crawford asked. "According to the probe data, their fleet left Zirion Prime 3 days ago," General Hayes replied. "With their faster-than-light travel, they could arrive in 2 weeks." "That's not enough time to build a proper defense," Dr. Foster said. "But we have some advantages. We know they're coming. We have some of their technical specifications, and we have something they don't expect." "What's that?" the president asked. "A united humanity that refuses to surrender," Foster replied. On Earth, the greatest mobilization in human history began. Every factory was converted to military production. Every scientist worked on defensive technologies. Every soldier trained for the fight of their lives. Children were evacuated to underground shelters. Orbital platforms were turned into weapons stations. The moon became a massive fortress, bristling with every weapon humanity could build. Dr. Foster's teams worked day and night to reverse engineer Dominion technology. The data from Ryan Davis was incomplete, but it gave them starting points. Human ingenuity began finding ways to adapt alien science to Earth's needs. "Their shields work on quantum resonance frequencies," Foster explained to his team. "If we can match those frequencies, we might be able to penetrate their defenses." "What about their weapons?" asked Dr. Sarah Kim, his lead physicist. "Pure energy, channeled through crystalline focus arrays. Incredibly powerful, but they seem to have standard patterns. If we can predict their firing sequences, we might be able to dodge or deflect some attacks." High above Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan prepared the orbital defense grid. Humanity had never built warships before, but they were learning fast. The ships they constructed were crude compared to Dominion vessels, but they were built with human determination. "We might not
have their technology," Sullivan told her fleet commanders, "but we have something they lost long ago."
"We're fighting for our homes, our families, our freedom. They're just following orders." On the lunar fortress, Colonel Sam Parker assembled the Marine forces. These were volunteers, every one of them. They knew they might die, but they refused to let Earth fall without a fight. "Remember," Parker told his troops, "the aliens expect us to surrender when we see their superior forces. They've ruled the galaxy so long they forgot that some people can't be conquered." As Earth prepared for war, the Dominion battle fleet approached through hyperspace. Admiral Zarketh commanded the most powerful military force ever assembled. He had conquered 50 worlds personally and never faced serious resistance. "The human world will fall in one day," he told his fleet commanders. "Their primitive defenses cannot withstand our power. We will destroy their military forces, then harvest the population for labor. Any who resist will be eliminated." But intelligence reports from other sectors began reaching Zarketh's flagship. Rebellion was breaking out across the galaxy. The Catherian miners had seized their asteroid facilities. The Oceanic Collective had destroyed Dominion underwater bases. The Spartus warriors were attacking supply convoys. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving requests for reinforcements from 17 sectors. The rebels are coordinating their attacks." Zarketh felt the first touch of uncertainty. In all his years of conquest, he had never faced galaxy-wide rebellion. Individual worlds had resisted, but never entire sectors at once. "How is this possible?" he wondered aloud. "It appears to be connected to the human situation, Admiral. The rebels are claiming that if humans can resist the Dominion, so can they." Zarketh realized that this was more than just conquering one primitive world. This was about stopping an idea that threatened the entire empire. If the humans could not be crushed quickly and completely, the Dominion itself might crumble. "Increase speed to maximum," he ordered. "We must reach Earth before this rebellion spreads further." But it was already too late. Across 1,000 worlds, Beings who had forgotten the meaning of freedom were remembering. The spark, lit by human defiance, was becoming a fire that would consume the galaxy. In the depths of space, two forces raced toward collision. The Dominion brought overwhelming power and 50,000 years of military experience. Humanity brought something the galaxy had not seen in millennia: the unbreakable will of people fighting for their right to be free. The battle for Earth would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of every species in the galaxy. The first shots of the war were fired not at Earth, but at mining world 7739. Fractos led his Catherian rebels in a desperate assault on the Dominion garrison. They had only mining tools as weapons, but they fought with the fury of beings who had finally chosen freedom over safety. "For 50 generations we have dug in their mines," Fractos shouted as he led the charge. "Today we dig our own graves, or we dig their graves. Either way, we dig as free beings." The Dominion soldiers were caught completely off guard. For 200 years, the Catherians had been perfect slaves, peaceful, obedient, broken. Now they fought like wild animals, using their industrial equipment to tear apart Dominion vehicles and weapons. Within hours, the rebels had seized the mining facilities and sent a message across the galaxy: "The Catherians are free. Who will join us?" On Aquatica, Flozinger Deep Current received that message in her underwater palace. The Oceanic Collective had been preparing for this moment. Their deep-sea laboratories had developed new technologies based on their natural abilities. "Surface the war pods," she sang to her military commanders. "The time for hiding in the depths is over." Massive organic vessels rose from the ocean floors of Aquatica. The Dominion had never seen weapons like these before. Living ships that could repair themselves, bioelectric cannons that fired concentrated lightning, creatures bred specifically for war. The Dominion naval forces on Aquatica found themselves fighting an enemy that used the entire ocean as a weapon. Tidal waves destroyed their coastal bases. Electric storms fried their communications. Sea creatures attacked their underwater facilities. But the greatest shock came from Spartus. War Chief Stoneheart and his clan leaders had found the ancient weapon vaults sealed since their defeat 4 centuries ago. The Spartans had always been warriors, but the Dominion thought their spirit was broken forever. They were wrong. "Warriors of Spartus," Stoneheart roared as he led 10,000 fighters into battle. "Our ancestors died with honor. We have lived with shame. Today we choose death with honor over life with shame." The Spartan attack was unlike anything the Dominion had faced. These were not rebels with improvised weapons. These were professional soldiers using tactics perfected over millennia of warfare. They moved like a single organism, each warrior knowing exactly what his brothers would do. Within days, the Spartans had retaken their homeworld and begun building new weapons. Their message to the galaxy was simple: "The warriors of Spartus, stand with the humans. Who else remembers what it means to be free?" Admiral Zarketh received these reports as his fleet approached Earth's solar system. His mighty armada was being pulled in different directions by urgent calls for help from across the Empire. "Admiral, we need reinforcements at the Catherian systems," his communications officer reported. "The miners have seized 12 asteroid facilities and are threatening our supply lines. The Oceanic Collective has destroyed our bases on 6 water worlds," another officer added. "Their bioships are attacking our trade routes." "The Spartans are moving toward the Beta sector," a third officer said. "They're gathering warriors from other conquered species." Zarketh felt the weight of command like never before. The Dominion military was massive, but it was spread thin across thousands of worlds. They had never faced coordinated rebellion on this scale. "Continue toward Earth," he ordered. "If we can crush the humans quickly, the other rebellions will lose hope and surrender." But even as he spoke, more reports arrived. The Andromedian Trade Guild, the Dominion's most loyal servants, had secretly begun supplying weapons to rebel forces. Entire sectors were in open revolt. The great empire was cracking. Meanwhile, Earth prepared for the coming storm. Dr. Nathan Foster's teams had worked miracles with the limited alien technology they possessed. Human ships now carried primitive shield generators and improved weapons. "It's not much," Foster told President Crawford, But it's better than nothing. We've also figured out how to detect their ships at longer range. Admiral Kate Sullivan deployed the Earth fleet in defensive positions around the outer planets. Her strategy was simple: make the aliens fight for every mile of space between them and Earth. We can't match their firepower, she told her captains, but we can make them pay a heavy price for every victory. Hit-and-run tactics. Strike fast, then retreat. Make them chase us through the asteroid belt. On Luna, Colonel Sam Parker had turned the moon into a fortress. Every crater held weapons. Every tunnel was filled with soldiers. The surface bristled, with guns and missile launchers. If they want Earth, Parker told his Marines, they have to go through us first, and we're going to make sure they remember this fight for the rest of their lives. The Dominion fleet entered the solar system like a dark cloud. Thousands of ships, each one more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. Admiral Zarketh expected to see Earth's defenses crumble at the first sight of his armada. Instead, he was met with the first human attack at Jupiter's moons. Admiral Sullivan had hidden her fastest ships in the gas giant's radiation shadow. When the Dominion scouts approached, they found themselves under attack from weapons they had never seen before. Human missiles were crude compared to Dominion technology, but they were used in ways the aliens didn't expect. Instead of trying to penetrate shields directly, the missiles detonated in coordinated patterns, creating interference that disrupted Dominion targeting systems. What kind of tactics are these? Zarketh demanded as his lead ship struggled to return fire. Unknown, Admiral, his tactical officer replied. They're not trying to destroy us directly. They're using area effect weapons to blind our sensors and confuse our computers. The first skirmish lasted only minutes, but it cost the Dominion 12 ships. The humans lost 6 vessels, but they had proven something important. The Great Empire could bleed. Admiral Sullivan pulled her forces back toward the asteroid belt, drawing the Dominion fleet deeper into the solar system. Every step of the way, they faced new surprises. Human fighters attacked from inside asteroids. Mining charges had been rigged to explode when Dominion ships passed. Even space debris had been weaponized. They're fighting like pirates, Zarketh complained. Where is their honor? Their formation discipline? His officers had no answer. The Dominion had spent 50,000 years fighting species that used traditional military tactics. Humans fought like no one they had ever faced. The real shock came when they reached Mars. The red planet had been turned into a massive weapons platform, but instead of waiting for the Dominion to attack, the Mars garrison launched a preemptive strike. Colonel Danny Wright led the Mars Defense Forces in an attack that defied all military logic. Instead of protecting their base, they flew straight at the Dominion fleet, guns blazing. This is for Captain Morrison and his crew. Wright broadcast on all frequencies. And this is for every free being in the galaxy. The Mars attack was suicide, and everyone knew it. But it achieved something no traditional defense could have. It shocked the Dominion into confusion. Soldiers who had never seen creatures willing to die for abstract concepts like freedom suddenly faced an enemy that preferred death to surrender. When the smoke cleared, Mars was gone, destroyed by Dominion bombardment. But the attack had cost the aliens nearly 100 ships and thousands of soldiers. More importantly, it had shown them something terrible. These humans would never surrender, no matter what the cost. Admiral, Zarketh's intelligence officer reported, we're receiving messages from rebel forces across the galaxy. They're using the Mars attack as a rallying cry. More species are joining the rebellion. Zarketh stared at the tactical display, showing Earth, still defended by Luna and the orbital platforms. He had expected to conquer this system in hours. Instead, he had been fighting for days and was still far from victory. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Zarketh began to wonder if the Dominion could actually lose this war. Behind him, Earth waited, defended by beings who had chosen to fight against impossible odds rather than accept slavery. And across the galaxy, that choice was inspiring others to remember what freedom meant. The siege of Earth lasted 3 months. Every day brought new attacks from Admiral Zarketh's fleet, and every day the humans found new ways to fight back. Luna's surface was scarred with craters from orbital bombardment. But Colonel Sam Parker's Marines refused to surrender. They can blow up our rocks, Parker told his troops as they sheltered in deep tunnels. But they can't blow up our spirit. We hold this line no matter what. The turning point came when Chief Engineer Ryan Davis finally cracked the secret of Dominion shield technology. Working from his makeshift laboratory in Earth's orbital station, he managed to reverse engineer a working shield generator. It's not as good as theirs, Davis explained to Admiral Sullivan over the communication link. But it's better than nothing. Our ships can now take a few hits before going down. For the first time since the war began, human ships could stand up to Dominion firepower in direct combat. The effect was immediate. In the next battle near Earth's moon, the human fleet managed to destroy 50 Dominion ships while losing only 20 of their own. Admiral Zarketh watched his tactical display with growing alarm. His supposedly primitive enemy was adapting, faster than he thought possible. Every day their technology improved. Every battle their tactics became more effective. Admiral, his communications officer reported, urgent message from Supreme Overlord Vexthul. The rebellion has spread to 300 worlds. The High Council is demanding immediate victory at Earth. Zarketh knew he was trapped. He couldn't win quickly enough to stop the Galactic Rebellion, but he couldn't retreat without losing face for the entire Dominion. His mighty fleet was being bled dry in a war that made no strategic sense. Then came news that changed everything. Captain Jake Morrison, still a prisoner on Zerion Prime, had escaped during a rebel attack on the Dominion capital. With him came Dr. Lisa Carter and Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone, along with crucial intelligence about Dominion weaknesses. The rebels hit the capital while most of the fleet was here at Earth, Morrison explained to President Crawford via secure transmission. But that's not the important news. We've learned that the Dominion's power comes from fear. When species stop being afraid, the Empire starts to crumble. Morrison's intelligence revealed the secret of Dominion control. For 50,000 years they had ruled through the belief that resistance was impossible. But now that belief was shattered. Across the galaxy, species were remembering how to fight. On Zerion Prime, Supreme Overlord Vexthul faced a crisis no Dominion ruler had ever encountered. Rebel fleets were converging on the capital world from 12 different sectors. The Catherians brought their industrial might. The Oceanic Collective contributed their bioships. The Spartans led warrior species from across the galaxy. How is this possible? Vexthul demanded of his council. We have ruled for 50 millennia. Our power is absolute. Not anymore, Admiral Kethvar replied. He had been studying the rebellion carefully, trying to understand its success. The humans showed the galaxy something we made them forget. They showed them that freedom is possible. The final battle began when Morrison, now commanding a mixed fleet of human and alien ships, led the assault on Zerion Prime itself. The Dominion's homeworld had never been attacked in its entire history. Its defenses were massive but untested. This is for every being who ever died as a slave, Morrison broadcast to his fleet. This is for every child who grew up in chains. This is for freedom itself. The battle for Zerion Prime was the largest space combat in galactic history. Thousands of ships fought in the planet's orbital space. The sky burned with energy weapons and exploding vessels. But for the first time, the Dominion was outnumbered. Morrison's tactics proved decisive. Instead of trying to match Dominion firepower, the rebel fleet used coordinated attacks that overwhelmed their defenses. Human ingenuity combined with alien determination created a military force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The end came when Lieutenant Commander Stone, now promoted to Admiral after his arena performance, led a direct assault on Supreme Overlord Vexthul's flagship. The massive ship was the symbol of Dominion power, and its destruction would signal the Empire's end. All units, concentrate fire on the flagship, Stone ordered. Take down their leader, and this war is over. The combined fire of 50 rebel ships finally penetrated the flagship's shields. Vexthul's vessel exploded in a brilliant flash that could be seen from the planet's surface. With it died the last of the old order that had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. In the aftermath, the Dominion forces surrendered rather than continue a hopeless fight. The great empire that had seemed eternal crumbled in months once its subjects stopped believing in its power. The treaty was signed in Earth's United Nations building. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to create a new government, based on equality rather than domination. The Galactic Federation was born, with Earth holding one of the founding council seats. Admiral Kethvar, one of the few Dominion nobles to survive the war, approached Morrison after the signing ceremony. "Your species has changed the galaxy forever," he said. "We thought order required slavery. You showed us that freedom creates its own order." Morrison shook the alien's hand, a gesture that would have been impossible years ago. "We didn't set out to change anything. We just refused to kneel. Sometimes that's enough." Dr. Carter established the Interspecies Scientific Consortium, promoting research and cooperation between species that had been isolated for millennia. Her work led to breakthroughs in technology, medicine, and understanding that benefited everyone. Colonel Parker became the first director of Federation security, helping former enemies learn to work together. His Marines, who had defended Luna against impossible odds, became the model for a new kind of soldier, one who fought to protect rather than conquer. Chief Engineer Davis led the technological revolution that followed the war. Combining human creativity with alien knowledge, he developed new forms of faster-than-light travel, clean energy, and medical treatment that improved life across the galaxy. 5 years after the war's end, President Crawford stood before the First Galactic Assembly. Representatives from 1,000 worlds filled the Great Hall, species that had once been enemies now working together as equals. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered," Crawford said, "but as free beings united in our determination to remain free. The galaxy belongs to all of us, and all of us belong to the galaxy." The applause that followed her speech came from beings with different languages, different cultures, different biologies, but they all understood the meaning of freedom, and they all knew who had helped them remember it. After the ceremony, Morrison walked outside and looked up at the stars. They seemed brighter now, not just because of the lights of ships traveling between them, but because they represented hope instead of fear. Jake Morrison had started this journey as the captain of an exploration vessel that got lost in space. He ended it as the admiral who helped free a galaxy. But the greatest victory wasn't military. It was the simple idea that no being should have to live in chains. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species and endless possibilities. But now they would explore those possibilities together, as partners rather than slaves and masters. The age of empire was over, the age of freedom had begun, and it all started because a small group of humans refused to kneel when someone told them they had no choice. Sometimes the greatest revolutions begin with the simplest acts of defiance. The stars shone down on a galaxy where freedom was no longer just a dream, but a promise kept by beings who remembered that liberty was worth any price. In the end, humanity's greatest export to the galaxy wasn't technology or culture, but the unbreakable conviction that all beings deserve to be free.